Roadhouse follows Dalton, who is a professional cooler, which is basically like a high-level bouncer. Dalton is working in New York at a club called the Bandstand, and when we first meet him, Dalton gets stabbed in the arm while trying to break up a fight. We know right away that Dalton is cool because he just stands his ground instead of doing what most people would do in that situation, which is that, I think it touched my bone. Dalton is visited by Frank Tillman, who wants Dalton to come work for him and be the cooler for the Double Deuce.
I need somebody to help me clean the place up.
Oh, and also he wants him to do light janitorial work.
$5,000 up front, $500 a night cash. You pay all medical expenses.
$5,000 up front and $500 a night? Even for a movie that was clearly written by a bouncer, that seems shockingly high. And it's no coincidence that deuce is another word for shit, because the Double Deuce is twice as shitty as a normal bar. They even have to put the Jeff Healey band behind protective fencing.
Hey, man, stick around.
Hey, you paid to play.
Like, look at these animals. Jeff Healey is blind and you're gonna throw shit at him? Like, this crowd just shows zero respect and just throws beer bottles instead of yelling for them to play Angel Eyes like a normal person would do.
So you say you and me get nipple to nipple.
You know, when Wayne Gretzky said you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, he was talking about this dude right here. And I'm sorry, but this is one of the funniest sight gags in movie history. The first night that Dalton shows up, a huge fight breaks out, and it's weird because this bar seems to be comprised of like 25% bouncers already. And they actually do most of the damage when a fight breaks out. Like, if I was Dalton, my first order of business would be to have my staff not body slam patrons onto the tables. And you know, this is not how I would want to spend a Saturday night, even if I was a lowlife. Just give me a 2-for-1 deal at Applebee's and a no duels, thank you very much. So Dalton basically travels from bar to bar, helping to turn them into respectable establishments. He's like Johnny Appleseed if instead of planting apple trees, Johnny Appleseed went to bars that should be condemned and made them a fraction less scuzzy. Dalton rents out a room at Old Man Emmett's farm and finds that Emmett is being harassed by Brad Wesley. Brad Wesley is a shady businessman who pretty much owns all the businesses in Jasper, and he shakes them down repeatedly. So Tillman gathers all the Double Deuce employees to let them know that Dalton is in charge of all the bar business. His first order of business is to clean house, and so he fires the head bouncer Morgan because he doesn't have the right temperament. And he lays down his 3 ground rules.
1, never underestimate your opponent. Expect the unexpected.
Like if a patron wants to settle up his tab using Bitcoin, you just remind him this is in 1989 and Bitcoin is not a thing yet.
2, take it outside.
It's Missouri. The weather is always nice. And it'll give you a bit of fresh air because it smells like pee in here like all the time.
And 3, be nice. If somebody gets in your face and calls you a sucker, I want you to be nice.
Like almost too nice. Someone calls you a sucker, you offer to help them move. People don't stab people that offer to help them move. Someone calls you an asshole, you respond with, well, I think you have a very nice smile. And they're gonna feel like a real ding-a-ling. And who knows, you might even make a friend out of the whole deal. Rule number 4, no bare feet. And Dalton catches the bartender Pat skimming money from the register and fires him.
So?
And this dude has the balls to act like that's not a big deal. I took a pen home by accident one time, and my boss yelled at me in front of everyone about risk management, and he made me agree with him that I was a worthless sack of crap.
You're going through a bottle every 30 minutes. You're skimming the till for 6 shots a bottle on drafts 1 every 10. Figure he's costing you about $150 a night.
You know, Tillman shouldn't have needed a bouncer to find that out. Keep accurate books, man. Jasper's hottest club is the Double Deuce. This place has everything. The Jeff Healey band, 30 bouncers of varying size, deals on Buicks. So Dalton drives a Mercedes, but when he starts a new job, he stores that car and buys a piece of shit car. In Missouri, he buys a Buick Riviera, and when he leaves after his first night, he finds that it's been trashed. And I love how in most movies, car companies won't allow their vehicles to even be shown dirty. And Buick was just like, drunks are gonna beat the living shit out of this car? Yeah, that's cool. We don't mind. You could even show someone taking a dump on the hood. We're fine with that. Or if Buick did have a problem with it, I guarantee this was the compromise for showing the car getting trashed. A meeting is called and Dalton is told that he can't fire the bartender because while Tillman owns the bar, the alcohol is supplied by Brad Wesley, and Wesley is Pat's uncle. And negotiations break down pretty quick. So he's trying to kill Dalton, right? Like, you don't attack someone with a knife unless you want him dead. And you know what? Actually, I'm starting to think that maybe Dalton doesn't get paid enough. So Dalton beats the shit out of all of them because he is a god. But he does allow one of them to stab him just to make these humans think that he's a regular mortal like them. And Dalton continues the ruse by pretending that he can't regenerate by going to get the knife wound stitched up at the hospital where he meets Dr. Clay.
I'll give you a local.
No, thank you.
Well, you better take it because I guarantee you they're going to charge you for it anyways. Dalton meets Red Webster, who runs the local auto parts store, and they become fast friends. Now, Dalton is an enigma. If you are salt of the earth and a hard worker and over the age of 60, he has nothing but the utmost respect for you. But this man works in the bar industry and he either hates or barely tolerates everyone else in that industry. Like seriously, here's how Dalton looks at two old guys that he just met, and here's how he looks at everyone who has to share a break room with. Some of Wesley's men show up at the Double Deuce to cause trouble, and Dalton kicks the shit out of them and then goes on a date with the doc. Dalton comes back to find his car trashed again. The next day, Brad Wesley's goons meet at Wesley's house. And this is why I could never be a mob kingpin. Like, your henchmen are just always around. You never have any time by yourself. It's like I just have a bunch of random people that I can't stand just always at my house. Like I'm a millionaire. I just want to sit around and play video games. Alone.
You got no endurance for pain.
And don't his henchmen have better things to do than get the shit kicked out of them by a man named Brad who wears a kerchief? Dalton's mentor Wade Garrett rolls into town, and if you think Dalton is cool, then Garrett is even more cool. He's like an older, grizzled version of Dalton. I mean, he's played by Sam Elliott, so the grizzled part just comes naturally.
Gentlemen, Wade Garrett. Holy shit.
And it's funny that Wade shows up and everyone is in awe that the Wade Garrett is in their bar. And you know what? This country could use a nationally recognized bouncer. His name would be like Buck Rollins, and he'd drive around the country in an old hearse, just fixing problems and dropping sage wisdom, having sex with dudes' wives. And the hearse would have like truck nuts hanging in the back, but in an unironic way. And there'd be a rumor that he killed like 18 people by ripping out their taint. America needs Buck Rollins right now. We learned that years ago, Dalton was messing around with a married woman, and when her husband pulled a gun on him, Dalton ripped out his throat. It was considered self-defense, but I would think I would have to be panicked beyond all reason, or be a complete psycho to muster up the mental fortitude necessary to rip out some dude's throat. That is savage as hell. Like, that's something the Predator would do, not a bouncer with a degree in philosophy. The next day, Brad Wesley requests an audience with Dalton, and you can tell that Wesley is a big deal because he has 2 pool tables in his house. Those things aren't cheap. Wesley tries to blackmail Dalton by telling Dalton that he knows about the man whose throat he ripped out in Memphis. He wants Dalton to come work for him, but Dalton refuses. Brad Wesley feels like he needs to send a message, so he burns down Red's store, and he drives a monster truck through the car dealership's showroom. And then he blows up Emmett's house for good measure. Dalton catches up to Wesley's goon and he gives him a bit of the old razzle-dazzle. And by razzle-dazzle, of course I mean he rips out his throat, and then he drags his lifeless body further into the river, screaming for Brad Wesley in a murderous rage. Now, ripping out someone's throat is like a very specific move. Claiming self-defense is dodgy once. Trying to claim self-defense twice is going to be next to impossible, especially after dragging the body to float downriver. So the next day, Dalton goes to the Double Deuce and... Wait a minute. The next day? Why is Dalton not in jail? Shouldn't the police at least hold him until they can conduct an investigation? Plus, Brad Wesley has the police in his pocket. Dalton should have committed suicide in a holding cell by now. Wesley calls Dalton and tells him that either Wade or Dr. Clay will have to die, and he'll flip a coin to decide. Wade shows up at the bar, and Dalton goes to try to warn the doc. When he gets back to the bar, he finds Wade murdered, and then he takes off with the murder weapon. Come on, man, you keep tampering with dead bodies, bro. Dalton then turns into Rambo and John Matrix. And single-handedly murders his way through Wesley's men. You know, it's always awkward when you run into a former coworker outside of work, and then you have to murder them. And then we get to the epic showdown between a prime of his life, tough as nails, throat-ripping Dalton, and a 60-something-year-old gangster named Brad. And I don't know why his name being Brad is so funny to me.
I thought it would be fun to fight you, Dalton. I really did. But now, I just don't have the time.
You know, everyone pulls out a gun when Dalton is kicking their ass, but I like how Brad just tries to play it off like he's too busy to keep fighting, and not, you know, near death. Dalton gets the upper hand and really wants to rip out Brad Wesley's throat. And I don't know, this would be Dalton's 3rd throat ripping that we know of. And I'm starting to think that this is just his go-to move. Like, if Dalton killed Wesley by ripping out his throat, then I think Dalton could technically qualify as a serial killer. Dalton comes to his senses as Elizabeth comes in and Wesley grabs the gun. But before he can pull the trigger, Red shows up and shoots him. And then Emmett shoots him. and then the car dealer shoots him, and then Tillman finishes him off. And this is what I call a small business association. But seriously, they're gonna have a heck of a time explaining all this. The police show up and everyone just says they didn't see anything, and that's that, I guess. Basically, in the 80s, Jasper was the place to be to get away with crime. Like, was Jasper where they tested out the purge before it went national? Actually, yes. You heard it here first. Roadhouse is a prequel to The Purge. So that was Roadhouse, the movie that caused a popularity surge for bouncers, throat ripping, and, interestingly enough, Buicks. Their gamble paid off.